The moment you stop being easy to destabilize, toxic coworkers do not calm down, they shift. They stop trying to confuse you directly and start controlling how everyone else sees you. That is the part most people miss because it looks subtle, professional, and almost harmless. But it is not harmless when the goal is still power, only hidden behind politeness. If you have felt the room change after getting stronger, you are not imagining it. You are watching someone lose access to your weakness and search for another door. And by the end of this, you will know exactly what that new door is. You will also know how to shut it without drama, panic, or another exhausting explanation. Maybe you finally stopped over-explaining in meetings, stopped apologizing, and started documenting everything. Maybe you noticed their jokes stopped landing once you no longer laughed to keep peace. Maybe you felt that strange chill after saying one calm sentence, "That does not work for me." That chill matters, because toxic coworkers hate the moment their usual leverage suddenly stops working. They do not need you broken to feel powerful, only unsure, defensive, and easier to manage. When that version of you disappears, they usually do not improve, they simply get sneakier. So if they cannot undermine your confidence privately, they start managing your reputation publicly. They start telling stories where you seem difficult, cold, uncooperative, or suddenly hard to approach. Notice the pattern. Once control fails, image control becomes the emergency plan. They smile more, but the smile gets thinner, sharper, and weirdly strategic. They ask casual questions that somehow always circle back to your stress, mistakes, or private life. That is not curiosity. A lot of the time, it is surveillance disguised as friendliness. They want material, not connection, because information becomes useful when direct control is no longer available. So they ask whether you are overwhelmed, whether things are okay at home, whether management knows. If you answer loosely, they store it like ammunition and wait for a cleaner moment. Then one day your stress becomes concern, your boundary becomes attitude, and your caution becomes secrecy. Toxic coworkers are often patient when patience better serves the setup they want. Another thing they do is become weirdly helpful, especially when nobody asks them to. They forward emails you already saw, repeat instructions you already understand, and hover over simple tasks. It looks supportive on the surface, but the real message is competence cannot belong to you. If they cannot make you look unstable, they try making you look dependent. And when you stop accepting that fake help, they suddenly call you ungrateful. Hear what that really means. You stopped accepting a chain disguised as assistance. Another move is exclusion, because exclusion creates doubt without leaving obvious fingerprints. They forget to copy you, leave you out of side conversations, and miss important updates. Then when you ask for context, they act confused and say they assumed you knew. That confusion is not always innocent. Sometimes it is professional sabotage wearing plausible deniability, especially after you became harder to embarrass in public or bait into emotional reactions. Because once they realize they cannot shake you openly, they start engineering small disadvantages quietly. Not enough to prove easily, just enough to make your day heavier. And if you confront every tiny thing, they get to call you dramatic. That is why strategy matters more than outrage in workplaces like this. Sometimes the new tactic is performance friendship after years of quiet hostility. They suddenly compliment your work, invite you to lunch, and laugh a little too hard. People around you think things improved, so your guard looks unnecessary now. But false peace is useful to them because it lowers witnesses and weakens your instincts. The moment you relax, they test whether old access can quietly return. They might bait you with gossip, hoping you say something they can later distort. Or they invite a personal confession, pretending they finally understand what you have been dealing with. Then your honesty gets replayed somewhere else with different emphasis and a dirtier purpose. This is why a calm boundary at work often sounds almost boring. I am not discussing that. I prefer keeping work conversations about work. Boring protects you because manipulators feed on emotional detail, exceptions, and unnecessary access. If they ask why you changed, you do not owe them a full autobiography. Sometimes the cleanest answer is, I am focusing on work and keeping things simple. Or, my answer is the same, if they keep circling back hoping your limit softens. Toxic coworkers often believe repetition is pressure, and pressure eventually creates permission. That is why they do not always fight the first no directly. They test the second no, the delayed no, the tired no, the guilty no. They want the version of you that folds just to end the tension. So when you stay calm and repeat yourself, it rattles them more than anger would. because anger gives them a story, but steadiness gives them nothing to grab. You will see this most clearly after a meeting where their usual tactic fails. Maybe they interrupt you, and this time you do not rush, flinch, or over-justify. You finish your point, keep your tone flat, and let the silence sit there. Everyone hears the interruption more clearly because you did not bury it with nervous energy. After that, watch what happens next, because the next move reveals everything. They may start sending overly formal emails to create a paper trail against you. Not because you did anything wrong, but because they need a new stage. Or they CC extra people on tiny issues, hoping volume will look like significance. Suddenly a normal question becomes a chain, a reminder becomes a record, a delay becomes character. That is what toxic coworkers do when they cannot win through emotion anymore. They switch from destabilizing you to framing you for other people quietly. And framing is dangerous because it spreads before you even know a story exists. Maybe a coworker tells your manager you seem tense lately and probably overwhelmed. That sounds caring until you realize they never asked you directly once. Fake concern is one of the cleanest masks control ever wears publicly. It lets them gather sympathy while you look guarded for noticing the setup. Or maybe the coworker who used to challenge you openly goes strangely quiet. Do not confuse that silence with respect too quickly at work either. Silence can be healthy, or silence can be punishment dressed like professionalism. Healthy distance creates safety. Manipulative distance creates anxiety and forces you to chase clarity. Toxic people love any setup where you do the reaching and they do the withholding. That is power to them, even if the office calls it communication issues. Then here is what most people miss, and it matters more than the behavior itself. The backlash is not proof you handled it wrong at all somehow. A lot of the time, backlash means they lost a pattern that used to work. Their irritation can mean lost control. Their coldness can mean lost access. Their sudden professionalism can mean they are building distance only so blame travels easier later. And when they say you changed, hear the translation clearly this time. It usually means you stop being easy to read, easy to guilt, or easy to corner. They are not grieving closeness. They are grieving convenience and the control attached. That distinction alone can save you from apologizing for protecting yourself now. Because once guilt enters, toxic coworkers know your boundary might still be negotiable. So the next skill is simple but not easy. Stop explaining clear limits to hostile minds. A clear limit sounds like, I am available during work hours, not tonight. Or, I already answered that, when somebody keeps reopening a question to wear you down. Or, we are not doing this when a hallway conversation turns into bait. Short works better than brilliant, because manipulation survives on side doors and extra language. Every extra sentence gives them material, and every emotional justification offers another handle. You do not need the perfect speech. You need the closed door. And sometimes, the closed door is nonverbal before it is verbal fully. Pause before answering. Keep your tone flat. Do not rescue the silence for them. That pause matters because controlling people often rely on your rush to smooth everything over. If you stay still, they have to carry their own awkwardness there. And a lot of them are less powerful than they look once that happens. Here is another hard truth. Some situations need strategy more than confrontation. Especially if the toxic coworker has seniority, social influence, or a manager who avoids conflict. In those situations, direct emotional honesty can become evidence against you fast. Not because honesty is wrong, but because the environment rewards appearance over truth. So protect yourself like someone who understands offices are political, even when they look friendly. Save emails. Follow up verbally vague conversations with calm written summaries afterward. Keep private notes with dates, patterns, witnesses, and exact wording when needed. Documentation is not paranoia when somebody profits from ambiguity at work repeatedly. And do not announce every receipt you keep. Quiet protection is still protection. Toxic coworkers love knowing where your defenses are, because then they can design around them. That is another reason to say less. Calm people look unreadable to manipulators. They do not know which button still works, so they keep pressing random ones. Maybe they try flattery again. Maybe they try public criticism dressed as feedback. Maybe they become the victim and whisper that you are impossible to talk to. Smear campaigns at work rarely begin with dramatic lies. They often begin with tone. She seems defensive. He is hard to approach. They take everything personally. Tiny sentences, casually delivered, can poison a room faster than open conflict. That is why your reputation should be built on consistency, not persuasion. Do solid work. Be brief. Be respectful. Let patterns speak longer than gossip. Healthy coworkers may not love every boundary, but they can handle one without retaliation. That difference matters more than whether someone seemed nice before you disappointed them. Not every difficult coworker is toxic, and that nuance protects you from becoming reactive. Some people are stressed, blunt, insecure, or disorganized without running a campaign against you. The question is not whether they are unpleasant. The question is what they do with limits. Healthy people adjust, even awkwardly. Toxic people punish, recruit, distort, or escalate. And once you understand that, a lot of confusion finally leaves your body. Because the pain was never just their behavior. It was the constant second-guessing afterward. It was wondering whether you were too cold, too sensitive, too serious, too difficult. But clarity changes everything. A person bothered by your boundary is revealing their relationship to access. If respect disappears when access disappears, it was never really respect anyway. And if a coworker needs you confused to feel stronger, their power was always fragile. That matters because you do not need to crush fragile power. You just stop feeding it. You stop volunteering personal details to people who keep proving they cannot hold them cleanly. You stop chasing warmth from people who only offer it when your guard is down. You stop trying to win fair treatment from someone invested in keeping you off balance. And strangely, that is when your real confidence starts becoming visible, even to you. Not loud confidence, not performative confidence, just the kind that no longer begs misunderstanding to end. The kind that says no once, documents patterns, and sleeps better after difficult days. The kind that knows being respected is more important than being seen as endlessly easy. If this hit home, notice which tactic you keep excusing because it looks small. That small thing might be the whole pattern hiding in miniature already. Try one change this week. Explain less, observe more, and repeat your limit once. And if you want, tell me which line described your workplace exactly. Subscribe if you're done being readable to people who weaponize what they learn. Protect your peace quietly. In toxic workplaces, quiet power is often the hardest thing to attack.